So there are people out there who still cannot wrap their minds around the idea that I'm a liberal or a progressive. And they see me, the way I'm dressed, the way I look, the way I talk, where I come from, and they say, there's no way that a good old boy from East Tennessee could ever think like this. Hey, no way, he has to agree with us on everything. I mean, they must be paying him to say that shit, because there's no way he could ever disagree with us. Which just goes to show how gullible y'all are. It just goes to show how easily manipulated y'all are. And it just goes to show how well the Republican Party and the conservative movement pulled off marketing the whole hillbilly gimmick. And they did this because we all grew up on a steady diet of the Dukes of Hazzard, Andy Griffith Show, shows like that. I still love those shows. I'm not knocking it. But we grew up in a world where hillbillies was named Gomer and Goober and Cletus and Enos and Billy Bob and shit like that. We were taught that that was the imagery of hillbillies. And we watched Hee Haw. You know, and they would show the old hillbillies laying out in the yard, you know, is it raining outside, little brother? I don't know. Why don't you call the dog in and see if he's wet? And along come people like Jeff Foxworthy, who cashed in on all of the stereotypes of rednecks. Don't get me wrong, I laughed at a couple of his jokes too, but he did stereotypical Southern humor. That's what he did. Luckily for me, I discovered Bill Hicks, and my whole world was changed. And if you don't know who that is, Google it, and he'll piss you off worse than I ever could. But you guys fell right into the whole hillbilly marketing strategy. You also went to church every Sunday where you were told not to question things, and you didn't. You never questioned anything, but you also never listened to anything either. So you just sat there every Sunday. You didn't listen. You didn't ask questions. And years later, when you grew up and started doing your own kind of sinning, and someone called you out on it, you found ways to cherry pick stuff you'd heard your preacher say to condone your lifestyle and to down someone else's. So if your cousin Eddie come out of the closet, oh, well, that's sinful. I heard the preacher say that was. But if you and your girlfriend just got done fucking on Saturday night and came to church Sunday morning, that's okay. Or she gave you roadhead on the way home. Well, the Lord knows our hearts. He knows we mean to get married. So that's the way y'all lived. And then as you got out into the world, you got jobs, you got families. Suddenly you looked over at the politicians. And the politicians had adopted the whole hillbilly persona bullshit. And it goes way back further than this. But, I mean, I'll go back as far as just George W. Bush, who, by the way, was the only member of the Bush family that had the Texas accent. And he come off with this good old boy mentality. You know, I'm just a good old boy. You want to have a beer with him. People used to always say, I'd like to have a beer with him. Which I would like to have a beer with him these days. That's how far batshit to the right we've went. But they come up with this whole, the politicians adopted the same hillbilly persona that was being fed to you on TV every day. Didn't matter what they voted for. Didn't matter what they actually did. As long as they just said the talking points you wanted to hear, and as long as they demonized the people you wanted to demonize, and as long as they blamed everyone but you were happy with what it is they had to say. And because you never asked a question in your life, because you were taught as a child, groomed as a child, to never question nothing, then you couldn't imagine that anyone could ever possibly disagree with you. Because your whole life you've been fed that you were right, that you're the victim, that it's you, everything's against you, and everybody's against you, and anyone that speaks against you is coming from the wrong place. They're doing it to get you. So yeah, you watched the Dukes of Hazzard. Uncle Jesse had on a pair of overalls, and so you think that everybody is going to sit around the General Lee going, well, that tears it. Well, no, not all of us do. A lot of us, when we were sitting in church, begin to see through a lot of the hypocrisy. And I was actually taught that by my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, who didn't even go to church all the time, but he used to say to me all the time, hey, make sure you read the Bible for yourself, because they'll cherry pick it. Make sure you read the whole book to get the context of it. I'd say, okay. And I would sit there and read my Bible, and it wouldn't match up with the things that the preacher was saying. One simple analogy I could give you, one simple thing I caught real early on was, every Sunday when we went to church, everybody stood up and prayed. Every Sunday. Stand up, everybody rise, join hands, pray. The Bible said that when you pray, don't stand like the heathen do, for they want to glorify themselves before men, but rather go into your closet, and whatever you ask the Lord for in private, he will reveal it to you openly. And when I pointed that out to my preacher, they were like, oh, well, I know it says that, but we just do that. That's just something we do. And as I began to question things that I seen, and I raised my hand in Sunday school class when the preacher said, the only way to get to heaven is through Jesus Christ. And I went, well, what about people that never met him? What about people that was born before him? Well, those was controversial questions. I was thinking in the carnal mind, and I was removed from Sunday school class because I did that. Because a Sunday school teacher didn't have the answer for a 10-year-old kid in Southeast Kentucky. So as I grew up, I began to realize that the church was not living what they were preaching. And I began to realize that the guys wearing the overalls and the guys doing the hillbilly accent and the golly Shazam bullshit, they was doing that to con you. They never had our best interest at heart. Not once did they ever have our best interest at heart. All they did was they pointed to the Democratic side of the aisle and said, that's evil, that's bad, that's wrong. And because you were taught, don't question it. So you didn't. You just went with it. But how many of you lived it? How many of you, honest to God, what kills me is when people, I'm a Christian. Okay, look, if you go to church every Sunday and you truly live it, you truly live a good, clean, straight up life, I'm not directing this at you. I'm directing this at the ones who never follow it, never read it, never study it, don't know jack shit about it, but when they're filling out a survey, what are we? Oh yeah, Baptist, or I thought it was Methodist. Oh, Baptist, okay, yeah. That's what I am. So that's why you guys fell for this shit, and that's why you can't believe that someone else could ever think differently. I'm getting yelled at on Facebook now and on Twitter and TikTok and YouTube and all these places. And I was being shh in Sunday school. I was being shh in school. I can't count the times like, well, we'll have to talk about that another time. We can't bring that question up right now. But you can't ask that one. But luckily for me, I had a grandfather who pointed out to me, question things, pointed out to me, ask questions and read it for yourself and look into it yourself. And luckily, I didn't just fall for the people. And I find it to be one of the most insulting things ever. You guys may feel insulted by the fact that I'm sitting here talking with the East Tennessee accent, wearing a pair of overalls, and singing country music. You may be highly offended that I'm doing that and disagreeing with you, but you want to know what highly offends me? Is the people who dress like this, the people who presented this persona to you to take you to the bank and to make themselves richer. And that should piss you off more than anything in this world, that they took our heritage and our culture and they dumbed it down and they belittled it so badly that now, how do they dumb people down on a TV show? They give them a Southern accent. When a comedian, and I love Bill Burr, I'm a huge Bill Burr fan, but anytime Bill Burr goes to talk like a dumbass, he talks like a hillbilly. And all comedians do that. I love the great Bill Hicks. He did it. I'm guilty of it. We all do it. Because that's what they mastered. They mastered the art of making us look like morons. And that should offend you way more than someone dressed like this thinking for himself. But you guys are welcome to think about that, or you're welcome to just chime in and ask me how much I got paid to do this. I didn't get paid shit. I'm sitting out here in the yard having a Monte Cristo cigar, and I'm drinking a Modelo beer. Ooh, yeah, I'm drinking that Mexican beer, boys. Oh God, he is a commie.